We have Brian Bouffard. Brian is a former Navy lieutenant commander and a JAG officer, and Brian, of course, defends military members in court-martial cases worldwide. Brian, thank you so much for joining us.
Crystal, thanks for having me.
Thank you. You know, this is such a topical story, obviously. Bo Bergdahl, Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl, who was the last American prisoner of war, he returned home early on Friday morning. That was today. His hero's welcome was suspended by a controversial prisoner swap, and there's so much more controversy regarding the homecoming of this soldier. And, you know, this is including accusations that he was a deserter. He's a 28-year-old man. He's the longest held American soldier since the Vietnam War. However, you know, he's going to be facing a lot in the coming months and even maybe year or so. What can you talk about as far as when a military official faces something like charges of AWOL or even court-martial cases?
Sure. You know, there's so much that we just don't know about this situation so far. There's been a lot of speculation, but as he is going through his reintegration process, he's being checked out medically. He may be, you know, seeing mental health folks to help him deal with the trauma of just having been over there for 5 years. Mm-hmm. But, you know, at some point, they're going to have to turn their eyes to a criminal investigation because even though, you know, obviously he's innocent until proven guilty, nothing's happened yet, but there is evidence out there to suggest that he may have committed one or more very serious offenses committed in wartime. So at some point, you know, he's going to face that investigation, and then what happens from there happens.
What do you think is going to happen criminally in this case? How long will it take for the government to, you know, in the military to find some of these charges, to actually charge Sergeant Bergdahl and to investigate further?
Well, it's very hard to say. His reintegration process, just like any prisoner of war, is going to take as long as it needs to take. And you know, again, that includes not just that process, but also the medical and potentially the psychological process. But what we do know, or at least what we think we know at this point, is we have people, other soldiers who served with him out there at his base in Afghanistan in 2009. And they undoubtedly, I mean, even at the time, they were interviewed and you know, gave their statements about what happened. But as the government learns more from Sergeant Bergdahl himself, mm-hmm. I'm sure they're going to be re-interviewing a lot of those people to try to determine, well, you know, what do we think happened here, and what do we think is the appropriate response to it.
Do you have any idea of what that would take in you know, like time-wise before we start hearing a little bit more of that? Are we looking into the fall?
I wish I could even estimate,
right.
but yes, my gut tells me that this is going to be a process measured in months, not weeks.
Okay. Well, I guess, you know, you mentioned some of those fellow soldiers of Sergeant Bergdahl who had said that he was a deserter, who have actually came out, even though they were being told not to. They were under gag orders in some cases. Is there anything criminally that could happen to those individuals?
You know, I've heard that same thing, and I haven't seen a copy of what they apparently signed.
Okay.
That seems a little bit unusual, except as you know, it might regard classified information that they're not able to talk about. So, you know, I guess probably the short answer is, yeah, there's potential liability there too. But this is just going to be a really fascinating thing to watch unfold, right, just from a political perspective, because the White House seems to have really come down on the side of, you know, Sergeant Bergdahl being a hero, and mm-hmm. Susan Rice referred to him as having served with honor and distinction, and you know, those words mean something in the military context, and I'm not quite sure that based on the evidence that we've seen that you can really make the argument that his service has been with honor and distinction.
Sure. You know, and I think that that's where most of the controversy is coming from. And plus, in the idea that the swap, I mean, and I know that I hate to use the terminology of swaps because it sounds to me like we're trading cards here. These are lives. You know, this is not
sure.
like your baseball card collection. However, you know, trading 5 highly influential Taliban, I guess you're calling them almost the not so fab 5. For Sergeant Bergdahl, and I guess in the another question would be just if being a soldier, if you were in a situation like that and you knew that your life possibly, you know, you could be traded for some people who would just go right back into the Taliban and making things worse for you know, the United States, would you be even responsive to that? Is that something that you would even be okay with?
Meaning if I were in
Yeah, if you were
Bergdahl's place?
in that, I mean, I've heard from other people who've served in the military who say, you know, there's no way that I would want to do that. I served my country, and there's no way that I would want to come home if it meant the 5 people being freed from Gitmo.
Sure. I'm not a combat veteran. I do have many friends who are, and I can't even begin to pretend to understand what it would be like to be captured by a vicious enemy, probably tortured. I mean, just, kept away from my family and my home. We have a code of conduct, and our service members are expected to abide by that code of conduct. And the core of that is keeping faith with your country and keeping faith with your brothers and sisters who are there with you.
Sure.
And if it turns out that he intentionally walked away from those people, they were depending on him too.
Yes.
So there's a lot of this stuff that just from a moral and an ethical perspective would be very difficult, I think, to deal with if you were in that position.
Absolutely.
And of course, we don't know what his personal attitude is, except through maybe some things that he's written in his emails, or at least is alleged in his emails.
Right.
So again, there's just so much we don't know, and so much that I hope comes out in the near term.
Well, thank you so much. Brian Bouffard is Fort Worth. You're representing people accused of military crimes. You do that worldwide, actually, in court-martial cases. You are also a former Navy lieutenant and JAG officer. That can't be an easy job as well. I can understand that maybe you take a lot of criticism for even doing those types of hearings and things.
I really can, but I think anybody who really believes in the Constitution and believes in the rule of law and believes that people really are innocent until proven guilty, and that the government should be put to its proof and made to do its job properly, those people understand why not only military defense counsel, but any kind of criminal defense counsel are absolutely necessary to a free society.
Definitely, very necessary, and thank you so much for doing that, and of course for shedding a little bit of light on what Sergeant Bo Bergdahl may be facing in the next coming months, both physically, mentally, and also on the criminal side. As we've said before, there's lots of pieces of this story. It's a puzzle right now, and it's going to take some time to put together.
I think that's exactly right.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Crystal. Take care.
Yep.